Hello and welcome to Boom Goddess Radio. I'm Jennifer Davis Page, your host. Today we will be discussing breast cancer. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month and has been since 1985. It was a partnership between the American Cancer Society and the pharmaceutical division of Imperial Chemical Industries to promote mammograms as the most effective tool to fight breast cancer, the most common type of cancer. Today we have as our guest Elaine Kennedy, who is a breast cancer survivor, and Dolly Quinn, owner of Dolly Quinn Salonspa. Dolly makes cancer patients look good and feel better. She works tirelessly to help cancer patients feel good about themselves cosmetically. Thank you, Elaine and Dolly, for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Elaine, I'd like to start with you. When were you diagnosed with breast cancer?
Well, unfortunately, it was in the beginning of 2020. And if you recall, it was a time when we didn't know what the pandemic was. We didn't know how it spread. So it was a scary time to be going through chemo. But what can you do? There I was.
How did you discover it? Did you have self exams, or were you feeling a lump? What sent you to the doctor, I guess, is my question.
Well, I found a lump. I am a regular checker. So okay. My mother had breast cancer, and when she got it at 80, and she would lecture my sister and I, oh, you have to do self-exam. And finally we turned to her and said, Mom, you're the only one that wasn't doing the self-exams. We know. So anyway, I discovered a lump. It coincided with a checkup with my doctor, who got me right in. I must say, at Banner, where the local hospital, they moved me so fast. They got me set up with a surgeon and with an oncologist and so on. So they moved very quickly. But I discovered the lump. It was small. And I want to say too here, Jennifer and Jennifer's audience, that there hasn't been a cure, as you all know. There's not been a cure. And it's been since the 70s. We've been trying, but it's not happening. So let's not wonder about that. But what has changed is that women are, in fact, doing self-check more often. They're doing their mammograms once a year. And so this has actually allowed us to discover cancer earlier than back in the day when women weren't aware of this. So I'm one in that category, and I'm consider myself very lucky because it was very small. We were able to catch it and kill it, and I am, to me and my doctor's knowledge, cancer-free.
That's excellent. Now, were you, because you caught it early, was it stage 1 at that point?
Yes, it was stage 1.
What do you recommend? This is a question for both of you, from all of the research that you two have done. What's the age that a woman should start getting mammograms? I know in doing some reading that some articles said 40 years old. Some say between 45 and 54. What is your, both of you, what is your opinion on when women should get started with their mammograms?
Well, I think I think that's something that a woman needs to talk with her doctor about. Because
okay.
if you have a history of breast cancer or other factors, that increase your likelihood of getting it, then you may want to start even earlier than 45.
Okay. Dolly, what are your thoughts?
Actually, I was in a different thing because my dad was a physician, so I did self-exams as a teenager when I was growing up. And I think it has to start literally easily by 30s, and women need to be on the ball and do self-exams. They need to learn it young and take some responsibility there too.
I agree.
That's excellent. So now, I don't think that, I don't know, but do you think that if you are 30 years old or 35 years old and you find a lump, God forbid, will insurance companies pay for these exams at a young age?
Okay, Elaine, I'll chime in on this one, Jennifer.
Okay.
Big problem in the insurance industry, and a lot of things they want to play the game on what they won't cover. I know because I dealt with some stuff before myself. And then they give you the runaround, and in this country, it is horrible. It's that people should have access to the care. It should be able to be covered, even if you have to do layaway payments, whatever. But no, they will kick you to the curb and just refuse to give you the exams. I know I've lived through it in my younger years at different times with jobs. That's a big issue in the insurance industry. It's like when they kick women to the curb when you're like 50 and 60 and say you've aged out and you don't need mammogram. Yeah, wrong.
Elaine, when you were originally diagnosed, how long was your treatment from the time that you found out and you were sent to your oncologist? How long was your treatment from the time from the first steps of it until you found you were cancer free? How long did that take?
Again, I was very lucky to catch it early, and it was very small. It was 3 centimeters, so very small, but still found it. I had a lumpectomy in February of 2020. That was the beginning of the treatment, and that was followed by chemotherapy and then radiation, and I am now in the last stage of chemo. I'm on a estrogen blocker, which is a whole nightmare of its own. But anyway, so I was done with all of this within the year of 2020. Okay. I did not have to, go through what I watched so many friends go through back in the day. I have a girlfriend who had breast cancer, and back in those days, 10 years ago, it was like the Chainsaw Massacre. I mean, one of the other changes I've seen in the treatment is that back in the day, they didn't know what to do, really. Not that they didn't know what to do, but they would just kind of hit you with everything they had because they wanted to kill it. And so it was a very different process than when I went through it in 2020, where they have a better understanding. This is just through learning, through the chemo. They have a better process of fine-tuning that treatment. So it is, my cancer had its own genome, and they could go after it very specifically. And
did you consider, or would you recommend to women to get a second opinion, or did you just trust your doctor to the point you just said, let's do it?
The latter. I knew it was there, and I could feel it, and was too small to see, but I could feel it. And so I did not get a second opinion. I really respected my oncologist.
Okay. Dolly, with women that you work with, when you have conversations with them, have some of them gotten second opinions, or are they like Elaine, where they trusted their doctors and just decided to go for it?
I've heard everything. So some have They felt excellent care and really someone really good on the first one. When I personally went years ago, I had a suspicious thing. I had 2 and 3 different opinions on a breast cancer scare years ago, and I went for like 3 different opinions for various reasons, whatever, to make sure I felt like I got good information. But I'll hear everything, all the above. Sometimes more than one, sometimes just one, whatever. Yeah, it's been very different to watch and listen to all this over the years.
Okay, but you've just had scares. You've not had
Yeah.
breast cancer.
Having it be like breast cancer, and I was very grateful to have the coverage and be able to get the connection. The thing is, so many women can't even get in to get something checked, and they're kind of shoved aside. That's the tragedy that's going on still.
Do
And are
either
you finding that's true with Planned Parenthood? Because
Mhm.
through the years, they have been the one safe place for women to go for care.
No, I've had a lot of people say they've had good, successful things, but yes, and a lot of times it's the whole psychological thing you're dealing with the diagnosis. And I seem to get like a lot of good feedback on, there were caring people there that really made the effort to get things done. That was good. A lot of it was when sometimes they were out in other offices, almost like what an attitude was with different medical offices and their policies seemed to be more of a problem. The Planned Parenthood itself, your El Rios, your different facilities where they seem to be really trying to keep an eye on and getting the women the connections and the help.
do either of you have any information on clinical trials and your thoughts on them?
Elaine, what do you know from your side of that?
Well, I don't know anything about that from
Okay,
a cancer perspective. I have been in trials before for heart disease. By the way, heart disease kills more women every year than all of the cancers combined. So
Mhm.
get your heart
Mhm.
checked.
well, we're going to do a
Mhm.
separate show on heart disease because we know how important that is. What about genetic testing? Elaine, your mother had cancer. Did you ever consider genetic testing?
No, by the time that I got to the place where I could discuss that with my oncologist,
Mhm.
I just didn't see the point. Again, I could see it, I could see it in the x-rays. I could feel it. So I thought, well, whether at this point, whether or not I've got the gene, I've got the cancer. So we talked about it, my daughter and I, and again, her decision was not to test. So we did not. And there weren't any trials for what I was going through in terms of my particular brand of cancer. So I didn't have any, but I have done other trials in the past, and this is just personal, but I'm all for it.
We're going to talk about diet and nutrition after cancer and what should cancer survivors avoid when it comes to consumption. Um, Elaine, let's start with you. What kind of, after your chemotherapy and all, what kind of diet? Did you change your diet on your own? Did your oncologist recommend to you that you don't eat certain things? Let's talk in depth about that.
Well, I did meet with a dietitian before the treatment started, and I happened to be on a diet to protect to control my diabetes with food. And so I'd been on this diet for 5 years and had very successfully controlled the diabetes. But when I went on the chemo and started getting so sick, and let me say something here. I don't know whether other women feel this way, but whenever people say to me, "Oh, you're a survivor," I feel like a fraud. I feel like, you're a cancer survivor. Well, I don't feel like a cancer survivor. Actually, the only time I felt like I had cancer was when I actually felt the lump.
Mm-hmm.
What I feel like I survived was the treatment.
Okay.
I mean, that's the reality. That was the reality for me was, how do I survive this treatment? I have some other, health factors that made it tricky for me. But anyway, I met with a dietitian. I was on this diet. So she basically told me to keep on doing what I was doing. My diet is high vegetable, high fat. It's kind of like a keto diet, high fat and low carb. So I had not, for 5 years, I had not eaten anything processed, and that's what's bad for cancer. Highly processed foods, so if you're going through the drive-ins all the time. So again, I hadn't had any processed food in 5 years. When I shop at Whole Foods, and so I would get uncured meats and
Organic vegetables.
yes. So I was already invested in a good, clean, healthy local diet. And so for me, the chemo was bad because, again, you feel sick all the time. And so the issue was, how do you hold the food in? And so for many women, that is a big issue, is that they can't eat. So while they're trying to fight off this cancer, they're also not getting enough nutrition. So it's really important. And so for me, again, talk to your doctor. And if you have any questions, they'll arrange for a dietitian or ask for a dietitian. I find in today's medicine, I am much more a participant with my doctor than I ever was when I was younger.
Dolly,
So
what are your thoughts,
woman
Dolly?
now.
Dolly, what
Yeah.
are your thoughts on diet and nutrition from the women that you've been working with?
Okay, yeah, and I have two of them right now, right in this very position, because one of the things that, first of all, psychological thing, second of all, so sick when they're going through the chemo and the weak and horrible. And just like Elaine said, absolutely what I have learned and what, they've shared with me too is, boy, definitely cut out the process. Whatever you want to have, you do need your little bits of like protein, even if you can do almost like homemade or good organic, like your soup. So even if you have to eat little bits at a time when you're laying there and you're feeling pitiful and weak, you can't be having no fuel going in. It's okay to have that little bit of fish. There's a little bit of turkey or whatever, but don't try the process. It's right in front of your face. It just has to be a decision on, yes, organic, and can you get that it's reliable? And it's absolutely your fats, your sugars, and your salts overdone. So it's the basics. And we actually talk a lot about breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And we were even feeding this lady when she was here the other day and did a whole thing on nutrition with her, just from what I've learned from other patients and medical people I know, because there's so much garbage out there. You have to really make the choices what to have. The good veggies, the good proteins, plenty of fluids, don't get dehydrated, and all that kind of thing. And making the shakes, some of them are very good at figuring out the kind of shakes that work, that you can get your good super greens and good things in there and stuff. So my little gal's doing well with that.
And there's a lot of things, don't you think, Dolly? There's a lot of things out there today that weren't there, again, 10 years ago, that make the eating issue easier. And I found a couple of things, and we did this with my mom, who was, 90 years old and 90 pounds and tiny little thing. And she just couldn't eat. She didn't want to eat. So we would give her, like the Pedialyte, the little, because she was little. So these kinds of supplements can really make a difference to bridge the gap. Your best bet is to eat healthy and eat clean. So you cooking your own meals and not getting fast food or processed foods, frozen dinners and so forth. So that's your best bet. But there are things out there today like supplements that don't have a lot
Yeah.
of sugar. That's why we gave my mom the Pedialyte, was because the
Yeah.
regular shakes were too high in sugar. So that's a good one. And another one that I found, my brother has a Epstein-Barr he's fighting and having a similar problem with eating. And I had discovered that what's called, is it Super 8 or 8 Greens? It's called.
Mhm.
And for the first time, it is an actual vegetable supplement that is made with real vegetables. It's not
Mhm.
just the vitamins. Most of the
Mhm.
vegetable things are the vitamins. And
Mhm.
but this is the real vegetables powdered down to
Mhm.
minuscule rates. So it's a really healthy, fast solution when you're having trouble eating. So there are things that are out there in the marketplace now that can help you kind of bridge that gap when you're going through
Yeah.
the chemo or after the chemo to take really good care of your health. And
Dolly,
Yeah.
let me ask you, with your experience with your clients after chemotherapy, what does it do to your hair, your skin, your nails? Talk about that, please,
Okay. Yeah,
and
because
help them.
being depleted and your system's going through a lot. Like my young lady in the other day, in the process of the port was put in, and then we got some of the hair off. Then we did like a short haircut. And then when the chemo starts to affect and the hair follicles start to loosen, the scalp is in pain because the hair is getting looser and the follicles are letting go. So we have that going on. So I went through, in her case, the shorter haircut, but I was able to do a little soft scalp massage thing, whatever. In the course of dealing with the hair part, then we're talking about what's happening that her skin's starting to get dry. And then you end up talking about your nails, your fingernails, your toenails, the whole thing, what can happen. And then just like Elaine said, the diet thing came in, and luckily this gal is a health thing and just has already been healthy. And part of the thing to know with like the supplements like Elaine's talking about, and I know this because of my dad as a physician, an incredibly large percentage of the supplements, because it's become a popular praise and a trend, whatever, and it's legitimate and it's good, there is not the regulation people think it is. And so many of them, what they're encapsulated in their gel caps, things, whatever, they have proven they find pounds of these in people's system that never get absorbed. So you want to really be really studying like the source, where you're getting your little, supplements and things, whatever, who you're dealing with to get that. And she's on a path with that. And between, as Elaine said, the right ones, and literally clean out the kitchen. This little gal has her kitchen cleaned out, and I said, here's some things to know. She's got that kitchen emptied of anything that's tempting at all. And that's when you really discover how rotten it can be. But then she has it lined up. So she's got everything to make what she needs and to keep the right things there. So that's the best thing, is have the organization going on there too.
What do you do when women come in and their hair has been falling out, and do you recommend to cut it all off? Do you recommend short haircuts? Do women like to, how many women like to get their hair cut versus buying wigs and wearing wigs?
Okay, so one the other day had hair halfway down her back. She was ready to shave it off completely because she didn't want to be depressed when it fell out. We ended up cutting it to the shoulders and looked at it.
Then let me add, it is very depressing. The nurses will tell you that for most women, the hair falling out is the hardest part of chemo. And having lost all of mine, I rocked, according to my daughter, I rocked the bald look. So I just went bald. But it's horrifying when you wake up in the morning in your bed and you put your hand through your hair and out comes a handful.
Yeah.
And so doing that, I did a preemptive buzz. And I think that helped a lot. I think the work you do is really important, and people, until you've been through it, don't realize how traumatizing that hair thing is. You think, oh well, hair, no hair, but it's alarming.
Yeah.
Thank
Some
you.
of them, some of them at the time will come in and want to buzz it all off. Very often there's a midway, part way, and I might see them 2 and 3 times. before, we end up doing the take it all off. And that's an individual thing. It's their comfort zone because they also like to be psychologically with everything else that I'm going to be talking to them about. And I might be doing a foot massage in between after they're taking a break over here, because so many of them have family members and friends that feel bad, don't know what to do, don't know what to say, so they do nothing. And they're floundering around like, oh God, oh God. And that's the part that I feel, talking about, I've been through it with so many people.
Dolly, does the American Cancer Society do you work with them locally to help women? And I have an 800 number that I'm going to give at the end of the show, and we're almost at the end of our show, but does the American Cancer Society help in our communities?
Actually, right now with the American Cancer Society, remember, their goal is to find a cure. And that is one of the reasons why, after the Look Good, Feel Better program started back in 1989, by the time we got to 2014, they ended up kind of disbanding the in-person programs, and it turned around and went to online. And what it is, it's lookgoodfeelbetter.org. So a woman can go on there and access a video and watch and get information about their skin, things, whatever. What I do is separate individually, because there's no longer the in-person workshops, and they notified me that they were planning to get them going. They can't get enough people at this point in time. I just keep it going individually because of how I feel with other friends that actually help me with groups. And we keep it going because the face-to-face in person is real important.
I only have a few seconds left in this show. I could talk to you ladies for another hour, but what I would like to say is that there is an 800 number, 24 hours, 7 day a week, 800 number, 1-800-227-2345. And that's the American Cancer Society hotline. You can also go to cancer.org. I would like to thank both Elaine and Dolly for joining me today. I'd like to thank my listeners for their continued support. Please visit us on boomgoddessradio.com. And remember, love, kindness, and respect is never wasted. We will see you on the radio next week. This is Jennifer signing off. Thanks, ladies.